When it comes to setting sail on the Sea of Thieves, a lot of us decide to do so for many different reasons, whether it be the thrill of combat, an unquenchable desire for riches, or sheer curiosity for the wonders of this world. So whenever we meet somebody who actively defies our goal, it is easy to feel bothered by that. But where does an inconvenience end, and where does griefing begin? Is attacking somebody on a tall tale griefing? Or is it griefing to camp the spawns of an already defeated crew? I mean, some say that any act of aggression is considered griefing, but nah man, that's child's play. The real griefing play is taking all of their supplies out of their barrels and then yeeting off their ship, knowing they could no longer fight you if they tried. But I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what I believe to be griefing, because the only person you have to convince is yourself. As much as I love myself a good battle, even I want to go on tall tales every once in a while. So when I found myself chased by a Reaper Emissary while just going about my business, you can be sure that I considered myself griefed. And well, let's just say that if you mess with the wrong person, the griefer can turn into the griefed incredibly quickly. I suppose all there's left to say is pick up a tall tale, make yourself comfortable, and get ready for another chapter of the Sea of Tales. Now, I'm sure that by now, most of you have already experienced the tall tale of a pirate's life, considering that's been around for a while. Well, my crew and I made an attempt to experience that story when it originally made rounds, however, we found ourselves with a few challenges along the way, the greatest of which was our narrow attention span. Since we are a very PvP-focused crew, and I just so happened to have some time to kill, I didn't want to bother anyone to come along. But as soon as I set sail from the outpost with my tall tale in hand, I saw a Reaper Emissary come my way. At first I thought this was just a coincidence, but the sound of cannon shots swiftly made me realize that this would not be a PvE kind of day. Knowing the average Reaper Emissary, I had a feeling like these guys would not let me go without a fight, so I seized the opportunity of my ship being ahead of theirs to jump into the waters to go for a board. Getting on their ship was not exactly difficult, but when I spotted them having crowded their capstan in chests so that I can't anchor them, the cringing began. Pirates that do stuff like that are usually the same fellas that run their loot into the Red Sea before admitting defeat, so I felt ever the more reason to teach them a lesson besides interrupting my tall tale session. Well, the only lesson that was learned on the first go-around was that I need to improve my sword skills. But I wasn't worried, since we are running the same class of ship, I had no doubt my sloop would remain in front of theirs while I waited to get off the ferry of the damned. Now with a better idea of what I had to fight against, I jumped off for another tussle. Funnily enough, despite watching the ladder, neither of these guys stopped me from getting on their ship, allowing me to unleash my true swordsmanship, an impressive display of skill to which the two of them responded by jumping off their own vessel. It's griefing time. Step 1, coconut on the stove. Step 2, get the stuff off the capstan. Step 3 would have to wait because the two of them had come back from their little swimming session. I wasn't about to fight them with a cutlass, knowing that I had to face two at once, so some well-timed blundy shots would have to do the trick. Anyway, back to griefing. I began tossing some of their loot overboard to buy myself some distance while they recovered it at a later time. It was then that I learned about these guys having stored all of their supplies in crates rather than in barrels, which made griefing them so much easier. The anchor had to be raised again for this to actually make sense though. But I'm not a monster. Most of the supply crates I tossed out were empty, and I just got rid of them as a spiteful act against their cowardly capstan tactic. I want to say that I was a benevolent griefer when I yeeted off the ship, but I gotta admit that falling off was a blunder on my part. They would get away this time, but I was fairly certain that I got my message across and that they would not come back to bother me again. I kept an eye out for their next moves before going back to my tall tale, spotting that they had either not noticed or given up on the Reaper chest I tossed overboard. But as soon as they headed the opposite direction, I could dive into the depths to pick up where I left off. Some part of me figured that leaving my ship in a spin was a good idea, but for the entire duration of my dive, I could not shake the feeling that these guys didn't just head out in a random direction. Was there some kind of world event, perhaps? I returned to my vessel eventually, and well, my intuition had not deceived me. An active fort of fortune was their destination, which made every griefing bell in my head ring. I decided to post up behind Discovery Ridge while they went about clearing the fort. It was at this moment that I tried my darndest to contact some of my pirate buddies to help me with the impending heist, but all of my pleas for help fell on deaf ears. The last time I went for a solo heist was before I hit PL. It was a bit of an embarrassing display, and I was determined to not repeat the same mistakes now that I have ascended. I figured I could spend some time loading supplies onto my ship, but when I found a keg on the island, I couldn't help myself. Yes, my friends, I decided to go for a swim, keg in hands, because the mere act of inconveniencing me while doing a tall tale warrants this level of griefing effort. Now, I will admit that I'm the proud wielder of the double gunning Sweat Lord title, but in that situation I was glad to have given the cutlass another chance. The mobility is not to be underestimated, but not having to worry about running out of ammo was definitely a game changer in this case. I swam all throughout the evening into the night, but just when I got close to my target, the keg disappeared. I was visibly distraught over having lost my win condition, but I didn't come all this way to give up now. Despite several mermaids trying to ruin my stealth action, I went on ahead and boarded the Reaper sloop in the dead of night. My Blondie was ready to deal with the worst case scenario, but thankfully neither of the two were on the ship at that moment, allowing me to climb the crow's nest to hide. I spent a very long time hiding as I waited for them to finish the fort, and let me tell you, this was a nerve-wracking experience. Some of you might know that tucking is not exactly my strong suit. As a matter of fact, I had never managed to steal something on the back of a successful tucking attempt before this very day. So needless to say that I was nervous about messing this up. Though it wasn't I who made the mistakes, these guys had the right idea of using cannon fire to bring down their enemies. However, they underestimated the firepower of the skeleton lords they were fighting. There are no words to describe how much I worried about this tuck to fail, not because of my own wrongdoing, but because these dudes were not competent enough to keep their own ship afloat. And well, what had to happen did eventually happen. Yep, their sloop was sunken. That meant it was only a matter of time until they realized that I was hiding. Obviously, I tried to be one step ahead of them and jumped down to finish what the skeleton lord started. You'd assume that I felt satisfied about seeing their ship sink to the bottom of the ocean as I made them follow its example, but in reality, I was just plain frustrated. What kind of tale ends in, and then my enemies sunk themselves, leaving me to finish the fort? Definitely not a good one, let me tell ya. And that is exactly why this story is not over just yet. Okay, so these guys going under is not exactly ideal, but that does not mean that my patience could not be rewarded. They were laying into the last boss for a while, meaning that it shouldn't take me much more effort to complete the fort. I began PvEing like I had never PvE'd in my life. The constant pressure of fearing my enemy's return fueled my every move. I had no time to waste. With a little bit of elbow grease, I managed to deliver the final blow and complete the fort. The key was mine now. All that was left to do is open the vault and claim my treasure. This was the first time I had seen the inside of a Fort of Fortune, but of course, I immediately jumped to the most valuable treasure in my eyes. No, not the mermaid gem, the chest of legends. But just as I put my grubby hands on the Athena chest, I spotted a familiar sloop coming my way. Oh crap, my ship is still one island over and these guys are already here? I had to hide the chest if nothing else to make sure that this whole ordeal wasn't for naught. I decided to tuck the chest away in a cannon tower, relying on my enemies being oblivious enough as to not notice me during the act. I mean, they did let me board their ship despite watching ladders, so what are the chances, right? With my most valued possessions stashed away, I made a run for the vault again. The idea was simple: a single Athena keg would be enough to sink their vessel in an instant, and even if I go down in the process, I could certainly come back faster than them. The only problem is that one of them was already on the island as I tried to make that play, and let's just say that things finally stopped going my way. The two of us ended on the ferry of the damned and I tried to play it cool. The last thing I wanted was for them to realize just how panicked I really was. I made way for the fort as soon as I got back to my ship. I didn't attribute a heck of a lot of competence to these guys, but even I had to admit that fighting 2-on-1 under pressure was not gonna be easy. Rather than going for broke, I baited them into thinking that I wanted to fight just to go for an evasive maneuver instead, heading right for the cannon tower. All I could do is hope that they didn't find what I desperately tried to hide away. Their sloop was right on my heels when I tried to go for the pickup. There was no going back now. I committed to the drive-by play and my heart raced in anticipation for what was waiting at the top of that ladder. Yes, my Athena chest was still there. I leapt towards my ship hoping that these guys are not gonna chain shot me before I can confirm the steal. Oblivious or not, certainly they must have realized that I was hiding something in that tower by that point in the chase. I sailed away to the sound of several cannon shots hitting my ship's rear, but victory was in reach. A couple simple maneuvers were enough to make them lose hope, and I could rest assured knowing that this Athena cell is gonna go uninterrupted. But now that the chest of legends was secured, why not go for the rest? On my last solo heist, I felt satisfied just trying to go for the Athena chest, but this one was already so much more successful that I felt a second wind at my back. I headed towards the fort once again to finish what I started and claim the remaining loot. What was a bit weird, however, was that there hadn't been a lot of retaliation. Even after I took down the mast and went for a few more drive-by shots, I didn't hear, well, anything. No cannon shots, no desperate firing of knife reach, or heck, not even the sound of repairs. But then a subtle noise came to my attention. Somebody was swimming towards my ship. Captain Chicken came back with a vengeance. Now, I don't know what their fighting strategy was, but apparently jumping off a sailing ship wasn't an accident the first time around. This time, however, they successfully grabbed onto a ladder to come back, just as my blunderbuss was already waiting at the other end. I used this opportunity to put more pressure on their already sinking vessel, assuming both of them were trying to swim towards mine. In the process, I spotted a few pieces of loot on their deck. However, a few notable items were conspicuously missing. They didn't end up trying to save their ship, at which point I was completely lost as to what their game plan really was. I couldn't hear anyone in the waters because an annoying bunch of mermaids kept firing at me, but I remained vigilant while I grabbed the loot. Things only began to make sense when I went back to the fort for the remaining riches as I spotted a glint atop of it. Looks like they were planning to make the last stand on the fort itself rather than on the ocean, and I mean, I kinda respect it. I left my ship to slowly sail away as a sort of insurance, but I had every intention of meeting them on even ground. I ran up to the fort with my blunderbuss in hand, dodging their shot whilst delivering a blow myself. All it took now was a swing of my cutlass to seal the deal to the tune of a whole bunch of angry Russian swearing. I had no idea what he was saying, and I also had no idea where his friend was, but I was laughing all the way back to the bank when I realized that this adventure was over and I had successfully secured my first solo heist of a Fort of Fortune. Alex arrived shortly after I dealt the finishing blow to bask in the glory I had collected and help me sell every single piece of loot. This is not how I imagined my journey to go when I set out to complete a tall tale, but hey, that's the beautiful thing about Sea of Thieves, isn't it? Sometimes you set sail with a specific goal in mind just to end up on an adventure you never dreamed of participating in. Not unlike the last episode in which we discovered just what it actually means to be a merchant emissary. I definitely suggest you check out that episode if you find yourself bored after having finished this one. You can find the code on screen right now. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you want to see more, and definitely ring that bell icon to not miss out on my next tale. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and until next time, peace.